Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku became the first true hero. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The door to the roof of the commercial building clicked shut, the sound final and hollow against the wind. It was a rusted, heavy sound, like the closing of a coffin. Izuku Midoriya stood alone. The wind whipped at his dark school uniform, chilling the sweat that had dried on his back. His hands hung limp at his sides. Moments ago, they had been trembling with excitement, clutching the hem of his shirt as he asked the question that had defined his entire existence. Now they were just empty. No, the word didn't echo. It didn't boom like a villain's threat or ring like a hero's catchphrase. It just landed, flat and heavy, like a dead bird dropping from the sky. Izuku walked to the railing. He didn't look over the edge to contemplate jumping. He wasn't there, not yet, but he looked out at the city of Mizurifu. From this height, the city looked like a circuit board, humming with electricity and life. Somewhere down there, heroes were patrolling. Somewhere down there, children were playing, pretending to be those heroes. And up here, the greatest of them all had just killed a boy's dream. I cannot simply say you can become a hero even without power. All Might's voice, usually a booming baritone of hope, had been thin and raspy. The steam rising from his emaciated form still lingered in Izuku's memory. The blood coughing from his lips, the gruesome scar that looked like a spiderweb of agony across his torso. Izuku gripped the railing, the metal biting into his palms. It wasn't just the rejection. He had been rejected his whole life. Katsuki Bakugo had rejected him with explosions. His classmates rejected him with laughter. Even his mother, kind and weeping Inko, had rejected him with an apology instead of belief. But this was All Might. The symbol of peace. The man who smiled at disaster. The man who said anyone could make a difference. It's not bad to have a dream, young man, All Might had said, turning his back to walk away, leaving Izuku with the bitter truth. But you also have to consider reality. Reality. Izuku looked at his hands. They were scarred from taking notes, callous from holding pens, burnt slightly from years of Kaken's bullying. They were quirkless hands. Genetic dead ends. In a world where 80% of the population could breathe fire or levitate objects, Izuku was a relic of a bygone era. Reality, Izuku whispered to the wind. He picked up his yellow backpack. It felt heavier than usual. Inside lay the charred remains of his hero analysis for the future, number 13. Kaken had burned it, thrown it out a window, and told him to take a swan dive off the roof. All Might hadn't told him to jump. He had just told him to give up. In a way, it hurt worse. Kaken's cruelty was expected. It was fire. All Might's practicality was ice. It froze the heart. Police officer, Izuku muttered, reciting the symbol's advice as he trudged toward the stairwell. They get teased, but it's a fine profession. He opened the door and began the long descent. Every step echoed in the concrete stairwell. Thud. You're useless, Deku. Thud. Sorry, Izuku. I'm so sorry. Thud. Without power, can you save anyone? No. By the time he reached the street level, the sun was beginning to dip, casting long, bruised shadows across the pavement. The city was noisy. Cars honked, screens blared advertisements for hero merchandise, and people chatted about their days. Izuku felt like a ghost haunting the living. He walked without direction, his feet carrying him on autopilot. He didn't want to go home. If he went home, his mom would ask him about school. She would look at him with those big, watery eyes, terrified that he was hurt, terrified that he was sad. He couldn't handle her pity tonight. He wandered through the Tatooine shopping district. The air was thick with humidity and the smell of street food, but underneath it, something else lingered. Smoke. Izuku stopped. His instincts, honed by years of fanboy observation, twitched. A crowd was gathering up ahead. A blockage. Police lights reflected off the glass windows of a convenience store. A villain attack. His feet moved before his brain could stop them. It was a reflex. Go. Watch. Learn. Take notes. He pushed through the back of the crowd, his small frame slipping between onlookers. Dude, this is bad, a man in a business suit whispered. Why aren't they doing anything? A woman asked, clutching her purse. Izuku broke through to the front line, the yellow police tape pressing against his stomach. He looked up, and his blood ran cold. It was the sludge villain. The same creature that had attacked him earlier under the bridge. The same creature All Might had captured in a soda bottle. The bottle. Izuku's hands flew to his pockets. They were empty. I grabbed onto All Might's leg. The bottle must have fallen. Guilt, hot and nauseating, surged up his throat. This was his fault. If he hadn't clung to All Might, if he hadn't been so desperate for validation, the villain would still be contained. It's my fault, Izuku breathed, his eyes wide. But where was All Might? He had to be here. He was the one who caught it. Izuku scanned the perimeter. He saw heroes. But he didn't see the hero. Death Arms, the punch-heavy hero, was standing by a crushed sedan, shouting at the police to keep the crowd back. I can't get a grip on him. Death Arms yelled, frustration evident in his voice. Physical attacks just slide right off. Kamui Woods was perched on a lamppost, looking hesitant. I can't get close. The fires are too intense for my wood. I need water support. Empty Lady, the giantess who had debuted just that morning, was standing awkwardly behind a building. I can't fit in that alley without crushing the civilians. She whined, shielding her face from the smoke. Izuku stared at them. These were pro-heroes. Licensed, government-sanctioned, merchandise-selling heroes. And they were standing still. They were watching. Why aren't they moving? Izuku whispered. The analysis in his brain, usually a source of joy, turned cynical. Death Arms is a bad matchup, sure. Kamui is weak to fire. Empty Lady is size restricted. But someone was dying. In the center of the inferno, amidst the burning debris and the suffocating sludge, a figure was thrashing. The villain had a hostage. He was using the hostage's quirk to cause the explosions, creating a perimeter of fire that kept the heroes at bay. Don't worry, a bystander shouted. The heroes will figure something out. Someone with the right quirk will show up. Yeah. We just have to wait. Wait. Izuku thought, the world slowing down around him. You're waiting? While a person suffocates? The smoke cleared for a split second, revealing the face of the hostage. Ash blonde hair. Sharp red eyes. A look of pure, unadulterated terror. Kaken. Izuku's heart stopped. It was Katsuki Bakugo. The boy who had tormented him. The boy who had told him to kill himself just hours ago. He was being drowned in sewage, his mouth forced open, his power being used against his will. And the heroes were watching. They were treating it like a shift change. They were treating it like a bureaucratic inconvenience. Not my quirk type. Not my jurisdiction. Waiting for backup. It hurts. Izuku didn't hear the words, but he saw them formed on Kaken's lips. The prideful, arrogant Bakugo was crying out for help. Izuku looked at Death Arms. The hero was checking his surroundings, making sure the cameras weren't catching his bad side. He looked at the crowd. They were filming with their phones. They aren't going to save him, Izuku realized with a jolt of horrifying clarity. They are going to let him die because the paperwork would be easier than the risk. All Might wasn't coming. The symbol of peace had run out of time. He was likely depowered, hiding in the crowd, helpless. Reality. Consider reality, All Might had said. The reality was that licenses didn't save people. Quirks didn't save people. People saved people. The yellow tape snapped. Hey! Kid! Get back here! Death Arms shouted. Izuku didn't hear him. He was sprinting. He didn't have a plan. He didn't have a quirk. He didn't have a weapon. His legs pumped furiously, his sneakers slapping against the asphalt. The heat was intense, stinging his eyebrows, drying his eyes instantly. What is that idiot doing? Kamui Woods screamed. The sludge villain turned, his liquid eyes widening. You again? Izuku screamed. It wasn't a battle cry. It was a sound of pure fear and adrenaline. Let him go! He skidded to a halt a few feet from the villain. The sludge lashed out, a whip of sewage aimed at Izuku's head. Izuku ducked, not because he was trained, but because he was small and used to dodging explosions. He swung his backpack. It was a clumsy, desperate move. The yellow bag, heavy with textbooks and the ruined notebook, flew through the air. The zipper was open. The hard corner of a math textbook collided with the sludge villain's eye. Gah! The villain flinched, his fluid form recoiling in pain. For a second, just 1 second, the sludge loosened around Bakugo's mouth. Izuku didn't stop. He clawed at the sludge with his bare hands. It felt vile, cold and slimy, like gripping raw sewage. He dug his fingers in, trying to find purchase, trying to pull the liquid away from Bakugo's face. Kaken! Izuku yelled, tears streaming down his face. Breathe! Bakugo coughed, hacking up slime. His red eyes locked onto Izuku's. Confusion. Rage. Shock. Deku? Why? I don't know. Izuku sobbed, ripping another handful of sludge away. My legs, they just moved, the villain recovered. The giant, liquid eye reformed, glaring with murderous intent. You little pest! I'll crush you! A massive tendril of sludge rose up, casting a shadow over both boys. It was death. It was the end. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut. This is it. I'm going to die. But at least I didn't just watch. He waited for the impact. He waited for the familiar booming voice of All Might to announce that he was here. He waited for the Detroit smash that would change the weather and save the day. The blow didn't come from the sky. Die! Boom! An explosion ruptured the air right next to Izuku's ear. The heat was blinding. Izuku opened his eyes. Bakugo had freed his hands. The breath Izuku had bought him, that single lungful of air, had been enough. Bakugo had ignited his nitroglycerin sweat, blasting a massive explosion directly into the villain's main body. The sludge villain screamed as the heat evaporated his moisture. He recoiled, his grip shattering. Move, Deku! Bakugo roared, kicking himself free from the sludge and grabbing Izuku by the collar of his uniform. They tumbled backward onto the pavement, coughing and gasping. The explosion had done what the heroes hadn't. It created an opening. Now! Kamui Wood shouted. Contain him! Finally, the pros moved. Death arms rushed in, punching the scattered, disoriented remains of the villain. Kamui Woods extended his limbs, creating a prison of lacquered wood to trap the smaller puddles. Empty Lady used her body to block the wind, shielding the fire. It was over in seconds. Izuku lay on his back, staring up at the smoke-choked sky. His chest heaved. His hands were covered in filth. His uniform was ruined. He was alive. He sat up, wiping soot from his face. He looked for All Might in the crowd. Maybe he was there? Maybe he had watched? But there was no tall, skeletal blonde man offering a thumbs up. There was only the media, swarming. Then, the scolding began. Are you insane? Death arms loomed over Izuku, his shadow large and threatening. The hero wasn't checking on Izuku's injuries. He was pointing a finger in his face. You could have gotten yourself killed. The hero shouted, his spit flying. You interfered with official hero business. Do you have a death wish, kid? You have no quirk. You were nothing but a liability. Kamui Woods nodded in agreement, crossing his arms. That was incredibly reckless. You disrupted the hostage situation. Leave this to the professionals next time. Izuku shrank back, his shoulders hunching. I just wanted to help. Nobody was moving. We were waiting for the right moment. Death arms barked. We had it under control. Under control? Izuku thought, a spark of anger igniting in his gut. He was dying. You were watching him die. He looked over to the other side of the blockade. The scene was entirely different. The heroes were fawning over Bakugo. That quirk is amazing, kid! A reporter shouted, shoving a microphone in Bakugo's face. You held off that villain for so long. You're a natural. A sidekick praised, patting Bakugo on the back. You're going to be a great hero with a power like that. Bakugo wasn't smiling. He was sitting on the back of an ambulance, a towel around his shoulders. He looked shaken. But the society around him was rewriting the narrative, in real time. Bakugo, the victim, was the hero because he was strong. Izuku, the savior, was the nuisance because he was weak. Izuku stood up. His knees were shaky. Go home, kid, a police officer said dismissively, ushering him away. and stay out of trouble. Izuku turned away. He didn't look back at the heroes. He didn't look at the cameras. He just walked. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a deep, aching exhaustion. The walk home was a blur. The sun had set completely, plunging the residential streets into twilight. No All Might. In his fantasies, the ones he played out in his head before falling asleep, this was the part where All Might would appear from around the corner. He would skid to a halt, tell Izuku that he had seen everything, and tell him that he was wrong. That Izuku could be a hero. Izuku walked past the corner. Nothing. Just a stray cat digging through the trash. He walked another block. Nothing. Just the hum of a vending machine. He realized then, with a finality that settled into his bones, that life wasn't a comic book. There was no secret test. There was no hidden reward for bravery. He had saved a life today, and the world hated him for it. Deku! The shout came from behind him. Harsh. Gravelly. Izuku stopped and turned slowly. Katsuki Bakugo stood under the street light, panting. He had run to catch up. His uniform was still singed, his eyes still wild. They stood in silence for a moment, the distance between them filled with years of baggage. I didn't ask for your help, Bakugo spat. His fists were clenched at his sides. I was fine. I didn't need a damn quirkless reject like you saving me. It makes me sick. You hear me? I don't owe you anything. Izuku looked at him. Really looked at him. Usually Izuku would stammer. He would apologize. He would cower. But tonight, Izuku just felt tired. You would have died, Kaken, Izuku said softly. Bakugo flinched. He looked like he wanted to scream, to explode, to hit something. But the memory of the sludge filling his lungs, the darkness closing in, silenced him. The heroes weren't moving, Izuku continued, his voice void of its usual anxiety. They were watching you die because they were afraid of looking bad. Bakugo stared at him, his mouth slightly open. He had expected Izuku to cry. He hadn't expected the cold, hard truth. Don't think this changes anything, Bakugo growled, turning around sharply. I'm still going to UA. I'm still going to be number one. And you're still a pebble on the side of the road. Bakugo stomped away, his shoulders hunched. But he didn't use his explosions. He just walked, looking smaller than Izuku had ever seen him. Izuku watched him go until he disappeared into the night. A pebble, Izuku murmured. Yeah. He turned and finished the walk home. When he opened the door to his apartment, the smell of katsudon hit him. It was his favorite. His mom must have made it to cheer him up after the doctor's appointment. No, that was years ago. Why did he think of that? She made it because she knew he was stressed about high school applications. Izuku! Inko Midoriya rushed from the kitchen. She took one look at him, soot-stained, smelling of sewage and smoke, eyes red-rimmed, and burst into tears. Oh my goodness! I saw the news. The sludge villain. Were you there? Are you hurt? Oh, Izuku! She enveloped him in a hug. She was soft and warm, smelling of soap and worry. I'm okay, Mom, Izuku said, patting her back. His voice sounded distant to his own ears. I was so worried. Why do these things always happen near you? She pulled back, checking his face for burns. Go take a bath, sweetie. I'll warm up dinner. I'm not hungry, Izuku said. Inko froze. Izuku never turned down katsudon. Izuku? I'm just tired. I'm going to my room. He walked past her, down the short hallway, and opened the door to his sanctuary. He stepped inside and flicked on the light. The room exploded with color. Red, blue, white, and yellow. All Might was everywhere. A life-size poster on the door. Action figures lining the shelves. Bed sheets. Rugs. A limited edition clock. Every inch of the room was dedicated to the symbol of peace. All Might was smiling from every angle. That fearlessly confident grin. It's not bad to have a dream. But you also have to consider reality. Izuku stood in the center of the room, feeling like a stranger in a museum. He looked at the poster above his desk. All Might posing with his hands on his hips. I am here. You weren't there, Izuku whispered. He felt a crack in his chest. It wasn't the sound of his heart breaking, that had happened on the roof. This was the sound of something hardening. He walked over to the wall. He reached up and grabbed the corner of the poster. Rip. The sound was satisfying. He crumpled the glossy paper in his hand. He moved to the next one. A vintage Silver Age poster. Rip. He moved to the shelves. He took the figures, the ones he had saved his allowance for years to buy, and placed them into a cardboard box in the corner. He didn't throw them. He wasn't having a tantrum. He was methodical. He was cleaning up. He stripped the bedsheets. He took down the clock. In 20 minutes the walls were bare. The room looked bigger, emptier, and colder. It looked like a normal room. Izuku sat at his desk. The surface was scarred with scratches. He reached into his yellow backpack and pulled out the charred remains of Hero Analysis number 13. The notebook was damp and smelled of burnt caramel. He opened it. The pages were crinkled. He flipped to the page he had started this morning. The drawing of Empty Lady. The notes on Kamui Woods. He picked up a pen. His hand hovered over the page. They are heroes, he thought. But they aren't saviors. They were celebrities. They were athletes competing for a high score. They prioritized their image over human life. And All Might. All Might was just a man, a tired, dying man who was holding up the sky alone, perpetuating a lie that everything was fine. Everything was not fine. Izuku thought about the sludge under his fingernails. He thought about the feeling of Bakugo's shirt in his grip. He thought about the fear in the villain's eye when the backpack hit him. He had no quirk. He had no license. He had no permission. But he had done more in 10 seconds than Death Arms had done in 10 minutes. Izuku turned the page to a fresh, blank sheet. He didn't write Hero Analysis number 14. He wrote a single question at the top of the page. What is a hero? He stared at the words. Underneath, he began to write. Not fanboy ramblings. Not gushing praise. A hero is not a license. A hero is not a quirk. A hero is the person who moves when everyone else stands still. He wrote furiously. He analyzed the incident. Why did Death Arms fail? Over-reliance on brute strength. Lack of creative problem-solving. Fear of liability. Why did Kamui Woods fail? Type disadvantage, but panicked. Could have used debris to create a bridge. Why did the sludge villain lose? His eyes were fluid but sensitive. The solid object disrupted his cohesion. Explosions dried him out. Izuku looked at his hands. I can't be All Might, he said to the empty room. I can't punch the sky and change the weather. He looked at the pile of discarded All Might merchandise in the corner. But I don't need to be. He didn't need to be the symbol of peace. The world had enough symbols. It had enough statues. What the world needed was someone who didn't care about the ranking. Someone who wouldn't wait for permission to save a life. Izuku looked at his computer. The blue light of the monitor reflected in his dark green eyes. He opened a browser and navigated to the dark web forums he used to browse for rare hero clips. He typed in a new search query. Vigilante laws in Japan. Loopholes. Support item schematics for beginners. Martial arts dojos near Mizuta cheap. He wasn't going to UA. The hero course was for people who wanted to be celebrities. It was for people like Bakugo, who wanted to win. Izuku didn't want to win. He wanted to save. He closed the notebook. On the blackened cover, where Hero Analysis was written in cheerful marker, he took a thick black permanent marker. He crossed out hero. He wrote, Vigilante. Then, he crossed that out too. It felt too criminal. He wrote, Practical. He stared at it. Practical analysis for the future. Izuku stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, someone was crying for help, and a pro hero was checking their watch, wondering if overtime pay was approved. I'm not going to wait, Izuku whispered. He turned off the light. The darkness of the room didn't feel oppressive anymore. It felt like cover. The fanboy was dead, and in the quiet of the apartment, something else began to breathe. The alarm clock on the bedside table didn't get the chance to beep. A hand, scarred with small nicks and wrapped in white athletic tape, silenced it at 3:59 a.m. Izuku Midoriya sat up in the dark. The room was silent. The walls, once a shrine to the symbol of peace, were now barren. The pale squares where posters used to hang stood out like ghosts against the wallpaper, a constant reminder of what had been stripped away. He didn't stretch. He didn't groan. He simply slid out of bed, his feet hitting the floorboards with a soft thud. 10 months. It had been 10 months since the rooftop. 10 months since the sludge villain. 10 months since he had decided that if the world wouldn't give him a license to save lives, he would forge his own permission slip. He walked to the corner of the room where a pull-up bar was mounted in the doorframe. He grabbed the cold metal. 1, 2, 3. His breathing was rhythmic, controlled. In the past, his workouts had been frantic, fueled by a desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, he could catch up to everyone else. Now, his training was cold. It was mathematical. Muscle density is the only compensation for a lack of kinetic enhancement, he recited mentally. If I cannot withstand the impact of a quirk, I cannot fight. 20. 21. He dropped down, sweat beading on his forehead. He moved to his desk. It was no longer covered in fan merchandise. Now, it looked like the workbench of a mad engineer. Soldering irons, loose wires, stripped circuit boards, and piles of scrap metal littered the surface. In the center sat a pair of heavy, black combat boots. They were second-hand, bought from an army surplus store 3 towns over to avoid recognition. They were scuffed, smelling of old leather and oil. Izuku picked up the left boot. It was heavy. He had gutted the sole and replaced the standard rubber with a layered composite of steel and shock-absorbing polymer he'd salvaged from a wrecked washing machine. Iron soles, he whispered. They weren't pretty. They were crude, bulky, and ugly. But they could kick through a wooden door. He had tested it. He sat down and picked up a screwdriver. The plating on the toe needed tightening. He worked in the dim light of his desk lamp, the scratching of metal on metal the only sound in the apartment. In the next room, his mother slept. Inko Midoriya had noticed the change in her son. She saw the dark circles under his eyes, the bruises he tried to hide with long sleeves, the way he stopped talking about UA High School. She thought he was depressed. She thought he had given up on his dream. She didn't know that he was closer to it than ever. But he was approaching it from the shadows, not the light. The scavenger of Dagoba. At 5 a.m., the sun was just beginning to bleed gray light over the horizon. The air was salty and cold. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was a graveyard of consumption. Mountains of trash, tires, appliances, broken furniture, rusted cars, choked the coastline. It was a place where people dumped things they no longer wanted. It was the perfect place for Izuku. He wasn't here to clean it. That was a task for a hero seeking public praise or a community service project. Izuku was here to mine it. He wore a thick gray hoodie with the hood pulled up, a mask covering his mouth, and heavy work gloves. He moved through the labyrinth of garbage like a rat, quick and silent. Servo motor, servo motor. He muttered, scanning a pile of electronic waste. He spotted a crushed microwave oven near the top of a heap. He scrambled up the trash pile, his footing sure. 10 months ago, he would have slipped. Now, his balance was impeccable. He treated the unstable trash like shifting terrain in a combat zone. He reached the microwave and pried the casing open with a crowbar. Inside, amidst the grime, was the magnetron and the high-voltage capacitor. Jackpot, he whispered. He wasn't building a death ray. He was building a distraction. He carefully extracted the components and dropped them into his canvas duffel bag. It clanked against the other treasures he had found, an intact hydraulic piston from an office chair, a spool of copper wire, and a canister of pressurized CO2 from a soda machine. He sat on the hood of a rusted truck, looking out at the ocean. The waves crashed against the garbage, a rhythmic, uncaring force. This beach was his dojo. He didn't have All Might to spot him. He didn't have a gym membership. He lifted engine blocks to build his back. He sprinted through the sand with tires tied to his waist to build his legs. He practiced parkour on the unstable piles of junk to train his reflexes. And he studied. He pulled a notebook from his bag. It was black, hardcover, and battered. Practical Analysis, Volume 3. He flipped it open. The pages were filled with diagrams, not of heroes, but of mechanics. Leverage points. Circuitry. Chemical mixtures for smoke bombs. But the most detailed pages were about quirks. Quirk, explosion, Katsuki Bakugo. Weakness. Cold environments reduce sweat production. Joint stress on shoulders. Telegraph's right hook when angry. Countermeasure, flash bang to disrupt vision. Low sweep to legs. Do not engage in mid-range. Close distance immediately or stay out of range entirely. Quirk, engine, tenya ida. Weakness, radiators can jam. Stall creates vulnerability. Linear movement, countermeasure, tripwire. Grease slick. Force a turn. Izuku stared at the notes. He wasn't admiring them anymore. He was dissecting them. They rely on their quirks too much, Izuku murmured to the seagulls. They think the power does the work. If you take away the power, they panic. He had seen it with the pro-heroes at the sludge incident. Panic. Hesitation. He closed the notebook with a snap. He slid off the truck and shouldered his bag. It weighed 40 pounds. He began to run. Not a jog, but a sprint, weaving through the trash, jumping over refrigerators, sliding under rusted beams. He was fast. He was quiet. He was quirkless, and that was his greatest weapon. They would never see him coming because they wouldn't be looking for someone like him. The ghost of Aldera Junior High School was a different kind of battlefield. For the last 10 months, Izuku had mastered the art of invisibility. He sat in the back. He didn't raise his hand. He didn't mutter. When the teacher asked about high school applications, and the class laughed at the idea of Midoriya applying to UA, he didn't react. He just stared at his desk. Let them laugh. He wasn't applying to the hero course. He had withdrawn his application months ago. He had applied to the general education department at UA, and several other technical high schools. He needed access to resources, to workshops, to the support course labs if he could sneak in. The final bell rang. The classroom erupted into noise. Hey, Deku. The voice was low and crackling with heat. Katsuki Bakugo stood by his desk, his hands in his pockets. His lackeys were behind him, snickering. Izuku looked up. He didn't flinch. He didn't tremble. His eyes were flat. What is it, Katsuki? The use of his real name, rather than Kaken, made Bakugo twitch. The blonde narrowed his eyes. For months Deku had been different. He didn't cry. He didn't run. He just existed, like a stone in the river. You're not actually taking the entrance exam, are you? Bakugo growled. Don't waste their time. You'll die in the practical. I'm not taking the hero course exam, Izuku said calmly. He packed his bag. You don't have to worry about me getting in your way. Bakugo blinked. The wind was taken out of his sails. He had prepared a speech about crushing him, about being the only one from this dump of a school to make it. Oh, Bakugo said, confused. Then, the anger returned, fueled by the dismissal. Good. Finally learned your place, huh? Finally accepted you're a worthless extra? I accepted reality, Izuku said. He stood up and slung his backpack over one shoulder. Good luck, Katsuki. He walked past them. He didn't look back. Bakugo watched him go, a frown etching deep into his face. Something was wrong. Deku wasn't acting like a loser who had given up. He was walking like someone who had a secret. Whatever, Bakugo scoffed, kicking a desk. Let the nerd rot. The digital underground. That night, the blue glow of the computer monitor was the only light in Izuku's room. He was on a forum that didn't appear on Google searches. You had to know the IP address. It was a hub for underground heroics, vigilante theory, and support gear enthusiasts. User, null Izuku. Subject, variable pressure gauntlet recoil issue. I'm trying to stabilize a compressed air discharge mechanism using a reclaimed CO2 canister. The recoil is fracturing the bracer housing. Any suggestions for dampening materials that are lightweight? He waited. The cursor blinked. This forum was his lifeline. Here, nobody knew he was a quirkless middle schooler. Here, he was null, a user known for terrifyingly accurate analyses of pro-hero gear malfunctions and clever engineering workarounds. A notification pinged. User, Babymaker May Hatsum. Recoil issue. Oh ho. Trying to blow your arm off. I like your style, null. Standard padding won't work if the PSI is over 500. You need to disperse the kinetic energy, not absorb it. Try a fluid-based layer. Non-Newtonian fluid packs between the bracer and the arm. When the recoil hits, the fluid hardens instantly to distribute the force, then relaxes. Izuku's eyes widened. non-Newtonian fluid, cornstarch and water, or a silica suspension. It was brilliant. And cheap. User null. That's actually genius. Thanks. Do you have a schematic for the valve release? Mine keeps jamming. User babymaker. Trade you. I need data. I'm working on a gyroscopic autobalancer for leg gear, but I can't test the stress limits without breaking my own legs again. You seem like you get into fights. Use my design. Send me the telemetry data. User null. I'm not a pro. I can't legally test gear. User babymaker. Did I ask if you were a pro? I asked for data. I don't care if you're a vigilante, or a villain, or a dancing monkey, as long as my babies get tested. Sending the encrypted file now. Don't die. A file download started. Blueprint_Euro_v4.cad. Izuku smiled. It was a small, sharp smile. He didn't know who Babymaker was, but they were the only person in the world who helped him without asking what is your quirk. He opened the file. It was complex, messy, but brilliant. He spent the next 6 hours building. He mixed cornstarch and water in heavy-duty Ziploc bags, reinforcing them with duct tape to create the recoil pads. He stripped the valve from an old fire extinguisher he'd found and machined it to fit the gauntlet. By 4 a.m., it was done. It looked terrible. A mess of pipes, straps, and gray plastic on his right arm. But when he triggered the mechanism, a blast of compressed air shot out with enough force to knock a heavy book off his shelf from 10 feet away. The recoil kicked his arm back, but the fluid pack stiffened, absorbing the shock painlessly. It works, he whispered. He looked at the calendar on his wall. The UA entrance exam was tomorrow. While Bakugo and the others were fighting robots to prove their worth, Izuku had a different test in mind. He wasn't going to UA tomorrow. He was going on patrol, the first night. The night air was biting. It was a Tuesday, typically a quiet night, but in the back alleys of Mizurufu, quiet just meant the crimes were silent. Izuku stood on the fire escape of a 4-story tenement building. He was dressed in his costume. It was a dark green hoodie, bought 2 sizes too big to obscure his silhouette. He wore black cargo pants filled with pockets. His boots, the iron soles, felt heavy and reassuring on his feet. On his face, he wore a simple black respirator mask, one he used for spray painting, to hide his identity and filter out dust. He pulled his hood up and secured it with a pin so it wouldn't blow back. He checked his belt. Smoke bombs, homemade, potassium nitrate and sugar, flashbangs, camera flash capacitors rigged to overcharge, marbles for terrain disruption, a coil of high-tensile wire, the air gauntlet on his right arm, concealed under the oversized sleeve. He was shaking. His hands trembled so hard the wire on his belt rattled. What am I doing? The thought screamed in his head. I'm a kid. I'm quirkless. If I get caught, I'm arrested. If I get hit, I die. Fear. It was a cold, slimy thing in his gut. Consider reality. This is reality, Izuku whispered into his mask. His voice sounded tinny. He looked down into the alley. It was a known shortcut between the train station and the bar district. 3 men were down there. They had cornered a salaryman. The man was pressed against the brick wall, clutching his briefcase. Come on, pay the toll, one of the thugs sneered. He had spikes protruding from his shoulders. A minor mutation quirk. I don't have any cash. The salaryman stammered. Then we'll take the watch. And the teeth, the second thug said. He pulled out a butterfly knife. Izuku's heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. Analyze. Target A spikes. Close-range threat. Probably tough skin. Target B knife. High priority. Right-handed. Target C, look out. Standing by the alley entrance. Bulky. Likely a strength quirk. Plan, neutralize knife first. He is the lethal threat. Disorient spikes. Evade strength. Izuku took a deep breath. He held it. He didn't yell smash. He didn't announce his presence. He dropped. He fell 2 stories, his capeless form plummeting silently. He didn't land on the ground. He landed on the dumpster lid, the shock absorbers and his iron saws taking the impact with a heavy thud. The 3 men jumped. What the? Izuku moved. He didn't pause for a pose. He launched himself off the dumpster, aiming for target B, knife. The thug turned, raising the blade. "Who are you?" Izuku didn't answer. He threw a small sphere, a homemade flashbang. It exploded with a blinding white light and a sharp pop. "Ah! My eyes!" Knife screamed, dropping the blade to clutch his face. Izuku closed the distance. He grabbed the thug's wrist, twisted his hips, and used the man's own momentum to flip him over his shoulder. Judo throw. The thug hit the concrete hard. Air left his lungs. "You little punk!" Target A, spikes charged. He lowered his shoulder, aiming to skewer Izuku. Izuku couldn't block that. If he blocked, he would be impaled. Dodge. Left. Izuku sidestepped. As the thug rushed past, Izuku extended his leg. The heavy steel toe of his boot caught the thug's ankle. Crunch. The thug tripped, his momentum sending him face first into the brick wall. He crumpled, groaning. 2 down. 5 seconds elapsed. The third thug, the lookout, roared. His muscles swelled, ripping his shirt. A strength enhancement quirk. "I'm gonna snap you in half," he charged. He was slow, but he was big. The alley was narrow. Izuku reached into his pouch and threw a handful of marbles onto the ground between them. The thug didn't see them in the dark. His heavy foot landed on the glass spheres. Slip. His legs went out from under him. He flailed, his massive arms windmilling, but he didn't fall completely. He caught himself on the wall, angry now. He lunged at Izuku, grabbing the front of his hoodie. "Gotcha!" Izuku was lifted off the ground. The thug's fist drew back for a punch that would shatter Izuku's skull. Izuku couldn't break the grip. He was too weak. Technique over power. Gear over grit. Izuku raised his right arm, pointing his palm at the thug's face. "Let go," Izuku said calmly. He triggered the gauntlet. Thump. The compressed air released with the sound of a cannon shot. The blast hit the thug point blank in the nose and eyes. It wasn't lethal, but the force was like getting hit with a medicine ball made of wind. The thug's head snapped back. His grip loosened. He fell backward, blinded and disoriented, crashing into the trash cans. Silence returned to the alley. Izuku stood there, panting. His hood was askew. His arm throbbed despite the padding. The salaryman was staring at him, eyes wide. Are you a pro?" Izuku looked at the man. He looked at the 3 unconscious criminals. "No," Izuku said. Sirens wailed in the distance. The police were coming. "You should go," Izuku told the man. "Run." The man nodded frantically and sprinted out of the alley. Izuku looked up at the fire escape. He had to move. He couldn't be here when the police arrived. He jumped, grabbed the bottom rung of the ladder, and hauled himself up. His muscles burned. The adrenaline was starting to fade, replaced by the shakes. He climbed to the roof and looked down. 2 police cars screeched to a halt. Detective Tsukachi stepped out, his trench coat flapping. "Secure the perimeter," Tsukachi ordered. He looked at the 3 thugs. "What happened here?" "This guy is out cold. Broken ankle. Concussion. Victim says a hero saved him," an officer reported. "But there were no patrols scheduled here." Tsukachi looked up, scanning the rooftops. Izuku ducked back into the shadows. "A vigilante," Tsukachi muttered. "In Muzutafu? We haven't had one of those in years." Izuku turned and ran. He leaped across the gap to the next building, his iron saws clanking against the gravel roof. He felt light. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a burden. He didn't feel useless. He had saved someone. And he hadn't needed one for all to do it. The aftermath. Izuku collapsed onto his bed at 2 a.m. He had stashed his gear under the loose floorboard in his closet. He was exhausted. He had a bruise on his chest where the thug had grabbed him. His right wrist was sore. He stared at the ceiling. He waited for the guilt. He was a criminal now. He had broken the law. Vigilantism was a felony, but the guilt didn't come. Instead, he remembered the look in the salaryman's eyes. Not pity. Not mockery. Relief. He rolled over and opened his laptop. He navigated to the local news feed. Breaking. Attempted mugging thwarted in District 4. Police baffled by attacker's injuries. He scrolled down to the comments section. User Naito. "I saw it. I was walking my dog. Some guy in a green hoodie jumped off a roof. He moved like a rabbit. User, Hero Watcher 99. A pro? Which one? User, Naito. No license. No flashy quirk. Just fast. He messed those guys up and vanished. User, All Might Fan 1. Probably just a small fry vigilante. He'll get arrested in a week. User, Truth Seeker. Id. The police report says he took down a strength mutant in 10 seconds. That's not small fry. Izuku read the name. Green Rabbit. Usagi. He touched the screen. Green Rabbit, he whispered. It's a start. He closed the laptop. Tomorrow, the UA entrance exam would happen. Mirio Togata would crush the robots with his permeation quirk, inherited from his own hard work and emboldened by All Might's secret power. Bakugo would blow up everything in sight. Shoto Todoroki would freeze the competition. The world would watch the bright, shining stars of the future. But tonight in the dark, dirty alleyways where the cameras didn't go, Izuku Midoriya had begun his work. He closed his eyes. For the first time in 10 months, he didn't dream of being All Might. He dreamed of blueprints. He dreamed of patrol routes. He dreamed of a city where help didn't require a license. And for the first time in a long time, he slept soundly. Epilogue: The Detective. Detective Naomasa Tsukachi sat at his desk, rubbing his temples. A file lay open in front of him. Photos of the 3 muggers. Thug 1. Spiral fracture of the tibia. Clean break. Caused by a precise, high-impact blow. Thug 2. Dislocated shoulder and concussion. Thug 3. Bruising on the face consistent with high-pressure impact. Traces of potassium nitrate, smoke residue, and cornstarch found on clothes. Cornstarch? Tsukachi muttered. Sir? Officer Sansa asked, poking his head in. The vigilante, Tsukachi said. Whoever he is, he's not using a quirk. Sansa blinked. Quirkless? Against a strength mutant? That's impossible. That's what I would have said. Tsukachi tapped the photo of the shattered ankle. But this kick, this wasn't super strength. It was a steel boot and perfect leverage. And the flashbangs were homemade. He closed the file. He pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and uncapped his pen. Subject: Unknown Vigilante. Alias: The Green Rabbit. Tentative. Quirk: Suspected quirkless/gadgeteer. Threat level: Low currently. Note: Highly efficient. Combat training evident. Monitor closely. Find him, Tsukachi said. Before he gets himself killed. Or before he hurts someone he can't fix. Yes, sir. Tsukachi looked out the window at the city. The sun was rising on the day of the UA exam. A quirkless vigilante, Tsukachi sighed. What is this world coming to? On the streets below, invisible to the detective, a green hoodie blended into the morning crowd, just another face in the sea of people, waiting for the night to fall again. The sky over UA High School was a piercing, optimistic blue. It was the kind of sky that belonged on a postcard, the kind that promised a bright future for the chosen few walking through the massive, H-shaped gates. Izuku Midoriya watched them on a screen. He sat in the back corner of a cramped, smoke-filled internet cafe in the seedier part of the Kamino ward. The monitor flickered, casting a sickly pallor over his face. He wasn't wearing a uniform. He wore a grease-stained gray hoodie and cargo pants that had seen better days. On the screen, a news feed showed the incoming class of 1A. The press was swarming the gates, desperate for a glimpse of All Might, who was rumored to be teaching this year. Izuku took a sip of lukewarm coffee. It tasted like battery acid. Look at them, a man in the next booth muttered, gesturing at the TV mounted on the wall. The golden calves. Must be nice to be born with a winning lottery ticket. Izuku didn't respond. He zoomed in on the live feed on his computer. He saw a familiar head of ash blonde hair pushing through the reporters. Katsuki Bakugo. He looked angry, as always, but there was a stiffness to his shoulders that Izuku recognized. The pressure to perform. Then, the camera panned to a tall, blonde boy with a million-watt smile, waving at the cameras. Mirio Togata. Izuku's fingers paused on the keyboard. Mirio Togata. The third-year student who had suddenly, inexplicably, skyrocketed in power over the last few months. Rumors on the underground forums were wild. Some said he took trigger, some said he had a secondary awakening, but Izuku knew, He had seen the footage of Togata's recent takedowns. The sheer wind pressure of his punches. The lightning-fast movement that looked less like permeation and more like raw speed. One for all. All Might had chosen his successor. A third year with a powerful quirk and a personality like the sun. It made sense. It was the logical choice. Togata was everything Izuku wasn't, charismatic, experienced, and powerful. Reality, Izuku whispered. He closed the news tab. He wasn't here to torture himself. He was here to work. He opened a black browser window. The deep net. Since the sludge incident, Izuku had become a ghost in the machine. He couldn't patrol 24/7, his body needed rest. But his mind could roam the darkest corners of the internet endlessly. He had written scripts to scrape villain message boards, encrypted chat rooms, and black market transaction logs. He was looking for a pattern. And 2 days ago, he had found one. Log 4992. User, Hanman. Request, anti-sensor jamming equipment. High grade. Destination, coordinates 34.6N, 135.5E. Log 5001. User Kuro. Request, transportation schedule. UA faculty. Izuku typed the coordinates into a mapping software. Unforeseen simulation joint USJ. UA off-campus facility. Izuku frowned. Why would villains need sensor jammers for a training facility? And why were they buying so many? The purchase order included enough weaponry to arm a small militia. He typed rapidly, cross-referencing the user Hanman with recent rumors. Rumor. A group called the League is recruiting C-rank thugs in the back alleys of Hosu. Offering big money for a one-time job. Objective, to kill the symbol. Izuku froze. The coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. Kill the symbol. Kill All Might. No, Izuku breathed. That's impossible. All Might is invincible. But he remembered the rooftop. The steam. The sunken eyes. The blood. He's not invincible. He's dying. If these villains knew All Might's limit, if they had a plan. Izuku checked the date on the stolen schedule he'd hacked from a careless teacher's email server. Class 1A, Rescue Training. USJ. Today. 12:30 p.m. He looked at the clock in the bottom right corner of his screen. 12:15 p.m. Izuku slammed a crumpled bill onto the desk and bolted. The train ride felt like it took a century. Every stop was an eternity. Izuku stood by the doors, his leg bouncing nervously. He was dressed in his civilian clothes, but his backpack was heavy with his gear. He had upgraded since the alleyway. The Green Rabbit had been busy. When the train finally screeched into the station nearest the USJ, Izuku sprinted. He bypassed the main roads, cutting through the woods that surrounded the massive dome-shaped facility. He needed to be unseen. If he walked up to the front gate, the security robots would detain him. If he called the police, they would ask for his source, call him a prankster, and waste valuable time. I have to verify the threat first, he told himself. Reconnaissance only. He reached the perimeter fence. It was high, topped with sensors. But the handman had bought jammers. If the villains were already inside, the sensors were likely dead. Izuku pulled a small device from his pocket, a frequency detector he built from a broken radio. The needle lay flat. The sensors are down, Izuku hissed. They're already here. He scaled the fence, his iron saws digging into the chain links. He dropped silently onto the other side and ran toward the massive building. He located the external ventilation exchange unit on the north side. It was a massive industrial fan system. He pulled a screwdriver from his belt. 4 screws. Lift the grate. Bypass the fan blades. He slipped inside the ductwork. It was dark, smelling of dust and recycled air. He crawled, the metal cool against his palms. He counted the turns in his head, visualizing the blueprints of the facility he had memorized months ago. Left. Straight for 50 meters. Down. He reached a grate that looked down into the central plaza of the USJ. The sight that greeted him stopped his heart. The USJ was a masterpiece of disaster simulation. Zones for fire, flood, landslides. But today, the disaster was real. A purple mist swirled in the center of the plaza. From it, dozens of villains were pouring out like cockroaches, and in the center stood a man with shaggy blue hair, covered in severed hands. Where is he? The man scratched his neck, his voice carrying up to the vents. Where is All Might? The schedule said he would be here. Below, near the entrance, Izuku saw the students of Class 1A. They were frozen in terror. Aizawa, Eraserhead, was leaping down the stairs, his capture weapon flying, engaging the horde of villains alone. 13 is protecting the students, Izuku analyzed, peering through the grate. Eraserhead is taking the aggro. But there are too many of them. Then, the purple mist expanded. It warped behind the students. Scatter them, the mist, Kurogyri said. No! Izuku shouted, but the sound was swallowed by the vents. The mist enveloped the class. In seconds they were gone, warped to different zones of the facility. Izuku's mind raced. This is a kill box. Separation tactics. They want to pick off the students one by one while the pro-hero tires out. He had to move. He couldn't stay in the vents. He kicked the grate. It clattered down, luckily landing on a walkway high above the plaza, unnoticed amidst the noise of battle. Izuku dropped onto the catwalk. He was high up, in the shadows of the dome's ceiling lights. He surveyed the battlefield. Aizawa was fighting like a demon, but he was getting tired. And there was a monster, a bird-headed giant standing next to the hand villain. It wasn't moving. It was just waiting. That thing is the ace, Izuku realized. That's the weapon. A scream echoed from the shipwreck zone. Izuku looked toward the artificial lake. A massive ship was sinking. In the water, villains were circling. He saw a flash of green. Tsuyu Adri. And a purple blur. Mineta. They were clinging to the side of the ship. A villain with a shark quirk was launching himself out of the water, jaws snapping inches from Adri's face. Izuku didn't think. He ran along the catwalk. He reached the section above the water zone. He clipped a high-tensile wire to the railing. Don't die, he whispered to himself. He jumped. The splash. Mineta Minoru was crying. This was it. He was going to die before he even got to touch a boob. Adri. He's coming back. Mineta shrieked. Tsuyu Adri held onto Mineta with one hand and the ship's railing with the other. Her heart was pounding. I know, Karo. The shark villain breached the water again, his mouth gaping wide. Lunchtime, kiddies! Tsuyu braced herself to kick, but she knew it wouldn't be enough. He was too big. Suddenly, a black blur plummeted from the sky. There was no hero shout. Just the whistle of wind and the zip of a wire. Izuku swung in a pendulum arc. He timed the release perfectly. He detached from the wire, flipping in midair. He didn't aim for the villain. He aimed for the water just in front of the villain. His hand went to his belt. He pulled the pin on a homemade depth charge, a canister of compressed sodium and water-reactive chemicals. Splash! He hit the water feet first, sinking like a stone thanks to his heavy boots. He shoved the canister into the villain's open gill slit as he passed. Izuku kicked off the villain's chest, propelling himself back toward the surface. Boom! A muffled explosion rocked the water. The shark villain's eyes rolled back in his head as the shockwave rattled his sensitive gills. He convulsed and floated belly up. Izuku broke the surface, gasping for air. He grabbed the edge of the ship and hauled himself up, water streaming from his hoodie. Tsuyu and Mineta stared at him. He was dressed in dark tactical gear, a black respirator covering his mouth, green eyes wide and intense. He looked nothing like a student. Who are you? Mineta squeaked. Get back, Izuku ordered. His voice was distorted by the mask, sounding deeper, mechanical. The water conducts electricity. If there's an electric-type villain in there, you're dead. We're surrounded, Tsuyu said, her voice surprisingly calm. There are more of them underwater. Izuku scanned the water. Ripples. Shadows. Mineta, Izuku said, pointing to the boy's head. Those balls. Do they float? Yeah. And they stick to anything. Good. Throw them. Now. What? Where? Everywhere. Izuku yelled, pointing at the water. Carpet bomb the perimeter. Adri, when they get stuck, grab Mineta and jump to the shore. Mineta, terrified but obedient to the commanding tone, started ripping balls off his head and throwing them frantically. Take this. And this. The villains underwater surfaced to attack, only to get sticky purple spheres glued to their faces, their fins, their arms. In seconds, the villains were sticking to each other, creating a tangled raft of confused criminals. Now! Izuku commanded. Tsuyu grabbed Mineta and leaped, using the villains' heads as stepping stones. She landed on the shore. Izuku followed, his boots heavy, but his movements precise. We need to help Aizawa-sensei, Izuku said, not stopping. Are you a pro? Tsuyu asked, hopping alongside him. I've never seen you before. No, Izuku said. I'm just independent support. He tapped the side of his mask. He had rigged a simple radio scanner. He could hear the villain's comms. Eraserhead is slowing down. Shigaraki is getting impatient. Shigaraki, Izuku noted. The leader. They reached the edge of the central plaza. The sight was grim. Aizawa was on his knees. His elbow was bent at a gruesome angle. Shigaraki, the hand villain, was holding Aizawa's arm, decay spreading through the cloth. You're cool, Eraserhead, Shigaraki whispered. But you're not All Might. The Noma stood behind him, silent and menacing. Let him go. Izuku didn't charge in blindly. He reached into his pouch and pulled out 3 small discs. Flash bangs. He threw them. Bang bang bang. White light flooded the plaza. Shigaraki recoiled, shielding his eyes. Gah! My eyes! Cheater! Aizawa used the distraction to roll away, panting, clutching his arm. Izuku slid into cover behind a fountain, motioning for Tsuyu and Mineta to stay back. Sensei! Izuku called out. Aizawa, one eye swollen shut, looked at the boy in the green hoodie. Who's student? No. You're not one of mine. Focus! Izuku snapped. He pointed at the Noma. That thing. I've been watching it. It hasn't moved unless given a direct verbal command. It's a puppet. Do not engage it physically. It absorbs shock. Aizawa blinked. Shock absorption? I saw it take a punch from you earlier. Its skin rippled. It didn't bruise. It dispersed the kinetic energy. Blunt force is useless. Analysis. Aizawa muttered. Smart. Shigaraki rubbed his eyes, glaring at Izuku. Who is this NPC? A new player? You're annoying. He scratched his neck violently. Noma. Kill the brat in the green hood. The Noma moved. It didn't run. It vanished. 1 second it was standing still, the next it was in front of Izuku. The wind pressure alone cracked the concrete. Izuku's eyes widened. Too fast. He couldn't dodge. Midoriya! A wall of ice erupted between Izuku and the Noma. Shoto Todoroki slid into the plaza, his right side covered in frost. The Noma's fist smashed into the ice, shattering it, but the delay was enough. Izuku rolled backward, scrambling to his feet. Todoroki? Izuku gasped. Todoroki glanced at him. He didn't recognize the masked figure. Get back. I'll handle this. No! Izuku shouted. Don't use ice. It will shatter its way out. We need to immobilize it, not block it. Who asked you? Bakugo's voice roared. Bakugo launched himself from the air, blasting a villain in the face before landing next to Kirishima. I'm gonna blow that bird brain to bits. Kaken, stop! Izuku yelled, forgetting to disguise his voice. Bakugo froze. He spun around, staring at the masked vigilante. That nickname. That voice. Deku? Bakugo whispered, his eyes going wide. What the hell are you doing here, Deku? Uraraka asked, arriving with Ida. Who is Deku? Shigaraki laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. A reunion? How touching. Nomu, kill them all, the Noma shrieked. It charged at Bakugo. Move! Izuku tackled Bakugo. It was a clumsy tackle. No grace. Just body weight. They hit the ground hard. The Noma's fist occupied the space where Bakugo's head had been a microsecond ago. The air pressure blew the other students back. Get off me! Bakugo yelled, shoving Izuku away. It targets the biggest threat. Izuku shouted, standing up and pulling a smoke grenade. It's reacting to aggression. Everyone, stop attacking! Stop attacking? Kirishima yelled. Are you crazy? It's a counterpuncher. Izuku explained rapidly, his mind working at hyperspeed. It waits for input. If we attack, it counters with overwhelming force. We need to restrain it without triggering its defense reflex. And how do we do that? Todoroki asked, ice forming on his hand. Mineta. Izuku pointed. The balls. Stick him to the floor. I can't reach. Mineta cried. Uraraka. Izuku turned to the gravity girl. Float Mineta. Use him as a turret, eh? Uraraka blinked then nodded. Right. She slapped Mineta, making him weightless. Ida? Throw him. This is highly unorthodox. Ida shouted, grabbing Mineta by the cape. But necessary. Engine boost. Ida spun and threw the floating Mineta over the Noma's head. Die. 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 Mineta screamed, raining sticky balls down on the Noma. The spheres stuck the creature's feet to the concrete. It tried to step, but the adhesive held. Now! Izuku commanded. Todoroki. Freeze the ground, not the creature. Lock the adhesive in place. Todoroki slammed his hand down. Ice surged across the floor, encasing the Noma's feet and the sticky balls in a block of frozen concrete. Bakugo. Izuku turned to his bully. Don't hit it. Use your explosions to create light. Blind Shigaraki so he can't give orders. Bakugo looked at Izuku. He hated being told what to do. Especially by him. But the Noma was a monster, and Izuku's plan, it was working. Don't order me around, damn nerd! Bakugo screamed, but he raised his hands. Stun grenade! A massive flash of light engulfed the plaza. I can't see! Shigaraki shrieked, covering his face. Noma! Where are you? Attack! The Noma struggled, but its feet were glued and frozen. Without visual confirmation or a specific target from its master, it flailed blindly. It worked, Kirishima breathed. He neutralized it. The students looked at Izuku. He stood in the center of them, panting, his hoodie ripped, his mask cracked. He looked small compared to the heroes, but his presence was colossal. You! Aizawa wheezed, standing up. Who are you? Izuku looked at Aizawa. He opened his mouth to speak. Boom! The entrance doors of the ESJ were blown off their hinges. Do not fear! The voice shook the dome. Dust billowed. For I am here! All Might stood in the doorway. He wasn't smiling. He was furious. His suit was torn from his commute, and his eyes were shadowed. All Might! The students cheered. Izuku felt a chill run down his spine. All Might was here. The symbol. But Izuku saw what the students didn't. He saw the slight tremor in All Might's leg. He saw the steam rising from his neck. He's at his limit. Shigaraki peered through his fingers. A manic grin spread across his face. Finally. The final boss. Noma! Forget the kids! Kill All Might! The Noma roared. It ripped its legs free, taking chunks of concrete with it. The adhesive and ice slowed it down, but didn't stop it. It launched itself at All Might. The two titans collided in the center of the plaza. The shockwave knocked everyone off their feet. Smash! 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 They traded blows too fast to see. He's pushing him back. Kirishima cheered. No, Izuku whispered. He's losing. All Might was bleeding. The Noma was absorbing every hit. All Might was punching the shock absorption, trying to overwhelm it, but he was burning through his time, his weak point. Izuku muttered, scanning the creature. The brain. It's exposed, but All Might couldn't reach it. The Noma's reach was longer. Izuku saw Shigaraki moving. The villain was sneaking around the flank, aiming for All Might's exposed side while he was locked in combat. Watch out! Izuku screamed. He didn't think. He ran. Again, he sprinted toward the clash of titans. He pulled the last item from his belt. A high-voltage taser he had built from a disposable camera capacitor and a stun gun. Shigaraki lunged, his hand reaching for All Might's ribs. Game over. Izuku slid between them. He jammed the taser into Shigaraki's outstretched hand. Zap. Ag. Shigaraki convulsed as thousands of volts coursed through his nervous system. His hand seized up, inches from Izuku's chest. All Might's eyes widened. He saw the boy. The green hoodie. The familiar messy hair. Yum! Hit the brain! Izuku screamed at All Might. Go plus ultra! All Might didn't question it. He channeled every ounce of remaining power into his fist. He didn't aim for the gut. He aimed for the exposed brain matter on top of the Noma's head. Detroit. He spun, using the torque of his entire body. Smash! The fist connected. The shock absorption couldn't handle the rotational force applied directly to the cranium. The Noma was launched. It broke the sound barrier. It broke the ceiling glass. It flew into the stratosphere. Silence descended on the USJ. All Might stood steaming, his fist raised. Shigaraki was on the ground, twitching from the taser shock. Kurogiri warped in, grabbing his master. We must retreat, Shigaraki Tamura, the mist said. The pros are coming. You! Shigaraki glared at Izuku with hate-filled eyes. You cheater. I'll remember you. They vanished into the warp gate. The battle was over. Izuku stood there, his chest heaving. His taser sparked and died. All Might deflated slightly, steam pouring off him. He looked down at Izuku. Young man, All Might wheezed. You saved me. Izuku looked up. He saw the man who had crushed his dreams. He saw the hero he still admired. You were slow, Izuku said, his voice cracking behind the mask. All Might flinched. The police are here. Ida shouted from the entrance. Izuku stiffened. Police. Tsukachi. Eraserhead. If he stayed, he would be unmasked. He would be arrested. Vigilantism. Trespassing. Wait. All Might reached out. Izuku slapped his hand away. I can't be here, Izuku said. He reached into his pocket and threw a smoke bomb at his own feet. Poof. Gray smoke filled the area. Cough. Cough. All Might waved his hand. When the smoke cleared, the boy in the green hoodie was gone. The escape. Izuku crawled through the vents. His body screamed. His shoulder was bruised. His legs felt like lead. He exited the facility on the north side, scrambling into the woods just as the sirens grew loud. He ran until his lungs burned. He ran until the Yui Dome was just a speck behind him. He reached the train station 3 towns over. He went into the bathroom, stripped off his hoodie and gear, and stuffed them into his backpack. He washed the soot from his face. He put on a clean shirt he had brought. When he looked in the mirror, he looked like a normal, tired student. But his eyes were different. They were sharper. Harder. He boarded the train home. He sat in the corner, clutching his backpack. His phone buzzed. A news alert. Villain attack at Yui All Might victorious. Students safe. There was no mention of a vigilante. No mention of a quirkless boy. Izuku rested his head against the cold glass. I was there, he whispered. I am here. The debriefing. In the Yui infirmary, Aizawa sat with his arm in a sling. Recovery girl had healed the worst of it, but he was exhausted. All Might sat in the chair opposite him, looking small in his skeletal form. Detective Tsukachi stood with a notepad. The students are shaken, but fine, Aizawa said. Except for Midoriya. Wait. No. Midoriya? All Might perked up. Izuku Midoriya? Aizawa frowned. No. I don't have a student named Midoriya. I was thinking of, never mind. Just a stray thought. Eraser, Tsukachi said. The students mentioned an 11th hour intervention. A boy in a green hoodie. They said he gave orders. Neutralize the Noma's mobility. Aizawa nodded slowly. He was tactical. He analyzed the Nomu instantly. He knew about the shock absorption before I did. He used the students' quirks better than they did. Did he have a quirk? Tsukachi asked. Aizawa paused. He thought about the flashbangs. The smoke. The taser. The way the boy moved, fast but human. No, Aizawa said. I didn't erase anything when I looked at him. He was quirkless. The room went silent. A quirkless child broke into the USJ and commanded a battle against S-rank villains? Tsukachi asked, incredulous. All Might looked at his hands. He remembered the boy on the rooftop. Can I be a hero without a quirk? He remembered the boy in the plaza today. You were slow. It was him, All Might whispered. Who? Tsukachi asked. All Might stayed silent. The shame was a heavy stone in his gut. He had told the boy to give up. He had told him to be a police officer. And that boy had just saved his life. Class 1A dorms, temporary holding. The students were huddled in the common area. Who was that guy? Kaminari asked, playing with a spark of electricity. He was insane. He jumped off the catwalk. He was scary, Mineta shuddered. But he knew exactly what to do. He called you Deku, Uraraka said, turning to Bakugo. Bakugo was sitting on the floor, staring at his knees. He hadn't spoken since the police interview. Deku. It was him. There was no doubt. The voice. The eyes. The way he mumbled analysis when he was thinking. But how? How could the pebble, the useless nerd, do that? Bakugo clenched his fists. He felt a strange mixture of emotions. Anger? Yes. Confusion? Definitely. But underneath it all, for the first time in his life, he felt challenged. Not by a quirk, but by a spirit. He's a nobody, Bakugo muttered, standing up. Just a pebble. But as he walked away, he knew it was a lie. The pebble had just started a landslide. The lair. Izuku sat at his desk. It was 3 a.m. He pulled the charred remains of his notebook out. He opened a new page. Incident report, USJ. Target, Shigaraki Tamura. Quirk, decay. Psychological profile, man-child. Gamer terminology. Target, Nomu. Artificial human? Multiple quirks. High durability. He wrote furiously. Lesson learned. Heroes rely on presence. Villains fear the symbol. Without the symbol, the fear vanishes. He looked at his gear. The taser was fried. The iron saws needed new plating. He had a lot of work to do. Mayhatsum, Babymaker, pinged him on the secure chat. Babymaker, I saw the news. Tremors detected in the USJ sector matching the output of my Euro balancer. Tell me you got data. No, I got data. The recoil dampeners held. But the taser burned out after one discharge. Babymaker, one discharge? Against what, a rhino? No, something like that. I need a better power source. Babymaker, I'm sending you specs for a high-density battery pack. But it's heavy. No, I can carry it. Izuku smiled. He wasn't in UA. He wasn't a pro. He was tired, bruised, and technically a criminal. But for the first time, he felt like a hero. He picked up a pen and added a new entry to his to-do list. 1. Upgrade taser. 2. Investigate League of Villains. 3. Figure out why they want to kill All Might. 4. Save All Might, whether he wants it or not. Izuku Midoriya closed the notebook. The game had changed. And Player 1 had just entered the lobby. The world was cheering. Millions of eyes were glued to screens, watching explosions of ice and fire, displays of kinetic power, and the raw, unadulterated spectacle of potential. The UA Sports Festival. The Olympics of the superhuman era. Izuku Midoriya sat in the dark. His apartment was silent, save for the hum of his computer tower and the low volume of the television. On the screen, Shoto Todoroki unleashed a glacier, freezing half the stadium. The crowd went wild. President Mike screamed until the audio peaked. Izuku didn't cheer. He didn't gasp. He typed. Subject, Shoto Todoroki. Quirk, half cold, half hot. Observation, over-reliance on the right side. Psychological block regarding the left, fire. This creates a predictable lag in his combat rhythm. If the frost builds up, his movement speed decreases by approximately 15% every minute of continuous use. Weakness, close combat pressure on the left side forces him to defend, but he refuses to use fire to create distance. Izuku hit enter, saving the file to his encrypted database. He watched the screen again. Katsuki Bakugo was fighting Ochiko Uraraka. It was brutal. The crowd was booing Bakugo for going hard on a frail girl. They don't get it, Izuku muttered, taking a sip of water. He's respecting her. He knows she's a threat. Izuku watched Uraraka's strategy, the meteor shower. It was brilliant. It was desperate. It failed. Bakugo blasted it away with a single, massive explosion. Izuku felt a pang of longing so sharp it almost doubled him over. He should have been there. In another life, maybe he was down there, breaking his fingers to flick away that wind, standing in the arena, feeling the sun on his face. Consider reality. He looked down at his own hands. They were covered in grease and small cuts from working on his gear all night. This is reality, he reminded himself. He wasn't an athlete. He wasn't a celebrity. He was a shadow. He switched tabs on his computer. The bright colors of the sports festival vanished, replaced by the stark, monochrome text of the police scanners and underground forums. He had been tracking a ghost. For weeks, reports had been surfacing from cities across Japan. Pro-heroes found in alleyways, paralyzed, cut down, their careers ended permanently. Some dead. Some maimed. The hero killer, Stain. The media called him a monster. The forums called him a force of nature. But Izuku saw the pattern. He targets high-density urban areas with high commercial hero ratings but low crime resolution efficiency. Izuku pulled up a heat map of Japan. He overlaid it with the hero killer's known strike locations: Tokyo, Osaka, Fukuoka. The pattern was moving. It was a pilgrimage. A purge. Where are you going next? Izuku whispered, zooming in on the map. He looked at the news ticker at the bottom of the sports festival broadcast. Ingenium, Tensei Ida, remains in critical condition following an attack in Hosa City. Izuku froze. Ingenium. Tenya Ida's older brother. He looked at the screen. Tenya Ida was in the stadium. He had just lost his match. But something was wrong. Ida wasn't doing the robotic arm chops. He wasn't lecturing anyone. He was staring at his phone, his face pale, his eyes hollow. Then, Ida left the stadium early. The announcer said it was for family reasons. Izuku connected the dots instantly. It wasn't a leap of logic. It was a terrifying certainty. Ingenium was taken down in Hosu. The hero killer is still in Hosu. Hero killers tend to linger in a city until they feel the work is done. Ida was going to Hosu. Not to visit his brother. He's going to hunt him, Izuku realized, pushing his chair back. He's going to try to kill Stain. Izuku grabbed his backpack. It was heavy, loaded with the upgraded gear he had been refining since the USJ incident. The sports festival was a game. It was a tournament for children to prove they could be good employees. But in Hosu, a real war was brewing. And Tenya Ida, the class representative with the rigid moral compass, was walking straight into a slaughter. The city of false idols. Hosa City felt different than Mizurifu. It was tighter, taller, the shadows stretching longer across the streets. The neon lights of the business district were blinding, but the alleys were pitch black. Izuku stepped off the train. He wasn't wearing his school uniform. He wore his patrol gear, the dark green hoodie reinforced with Kevlar lining, the black cargo pants, the respirator mask hanging around his neck, and the heavy, metallic clank of the iron saws. He pulled his hood up. The city was busy. Normal people were going about their Tuesday evening. They didn't know a serial killer was walking among them. Izuku checked his phone. He had hacked into the local transit authority's camera feed, a trick Babymaker had taught him. He was running facial recognition for Tenya Ida. Ping. Target located. Hosa Station North Exit. 18:45 p.m. Ida was here. And he was wearing his hero costume. Idiot, Izuku hissed, breaking into a run. You're not sanctioned. You're looking for a fight you can't win. Izuku navigated the rooftops. It was slower than the streets, but he couldn't risk being stopped by the police. He moved with practiced ease now. Parkour wasn't just about jumping, it was about flow. He vaulted over AC units, slid under billboards, and leaped across gaps that would have terrified him a year ago. Suddenly, the ground shook. Boom! A plume of fire erupted a few blocks away. Then another. Screams began to rise from the streets below. Izuku skidded to a halt on the edge of a 4-story building. He looked toward the commercial district. Creatures were rampaging. They weren't villains in costumes. They were monsters. Exposed brains. Beak-like mouths. Dead eyes. Nomu, Izuku breathed. There are 3 of them. The League of Villains. They were here too. Was it a coincidence? No. Shigaraki was a child. If the world was watching the hero killer, Shigaraki would want to steal the spotlight. He would burn the city down to prove a point. Chaos erupted. Cars were flipped. Civilians were running. Pro-heroes, Manuel, Native, and others, were engaging the Nomu. Izuku's instinct screamed at him to help. Go to the fire. Save the people. He watched Manuel, the water hero, struggling to contain a fire started by a winged Nomu. He saw civilians trapped in a bus, but then he looked at the darker, quieter sector of the city. The alleys away from the chaos. If the pros were busy with the Noma, nobody was watching for Stain, and if Ida was hunting Stain, he wouldn't be where the noise was. He would be where the silence was. The pros can handle the Nomu, Izuku decided, forcing himself to turn away from the explosions. But nobody is coming for Ida. He turned and sprinted toward the silence. The alleyway smelled of garbage and old blood. It was a dead end, a concrete throat that swallowed light. Tenya Ida lay on the ground. His armor was shattered. A blade was driven through his shoulder, pinning him to the asphalt. He couldn't move his legs. He couldn't feel them. Standing over him was a nightmare. Stain. The hero killer. He wore a ragged red scarf, a vest loaded with blades, and boots spiked for traction. His eyes were manic, white pupils surrounded by darkness. He held a jagged katana, dripping with Ida's blood. You represent everything wrong with this society, Stain lectured, his voice like grinding stones. Shut up! Ida screamed, tears streaming down his face beneath his helmet. You hurt my brother! He was a great hero. He saved people. And you crippled him? Ingenium, Stain spat the name. He was weak. He focused on the fame. On the result. He didn't fight to purge the world. He fought to maintain the status quo. And you, look at you. Stain pointed the sword at Ida's throat. You came here for revenge. You didn't save the hero native, who is bleeding out behind me. You walked right past him to get to me. You are not a hero. You are a child throwing a tantrum. I'll kill you! Ida roared. Save that breath, Stain whispered, raising the blade. Use it to pray. The blade came down. Clang. It didn't hit flesh. It hit steel. A green blur had dropped from the fire escape above. A metal pipe, salvaged from a construction site, intercepted the katana. Sparks flew. Stain's eyes widened slightly. Oh, Izuku Midoriya stood over Ida. He was small compared to the killer. His hoodie was baggy. His mask covered his face, but his stance was solid. He pushed back, shoving Stain away. Get up, Ingenium! Izuku shouted, using Ida's hero name. I can't move. Ida gasped. Who? Stain hopped back, landing lightly on a dumpster. He licked his lips, tasting the air. Another child? No. You moved differently. Izuku held the pipe in a defensive guard. His heart was hammering so hard he thought it might crack his ribs. This was Stain. This was the man who had killed 17 pro-heroes. You're the vigilante, Stain said, tilting his head. The one from the news. Small fry. The green rabbit. Ida, Izuku said, ignoring Stain, his eyes locked on the killer's twitching muscles. His quirk works by ingesting blood. Do not let him cut you. If he licks the blood, you're paralyzed. How do you know that? Stain asked, intrigued. The police haven't released that detail. I analyzed the footage, Izuku said, his voice distorted by the mask. The paralysis duration varies by blood type. Type B is the longest. Ida is type A. You have maybe 2 minutes left before it wears off. Observant, Stain praised coldly. But knowledge is useless without power. Stain lunged. He was fast. Faster than the camera footage showed. He closed the 10-meter gap in a heartbeat. The katana slashed horizontally, aiming for Izuku's neck. Izuku didn't block. He dropped. He slid under the blade, his iron soles scraping against the pavement. As he slid, he kicked upward. Clank. The steel toe of his boot connected with Stain's wrist. It wasn't enough to break bone, but it jarred the killer's grip. Izuku rolled to his feet and threw a handful of small, spiked objects. Caltrops. Stain stepped on them, grimaced, and leaped back to the wall. He clung to the brickwork like a spider, using the spikes on his boots. Tricks, Stain scoffed. You fight like a coward. I fight to win, Izuku retorted. He reached into his belt and pulled out a flashbang. No! Ida shouted from the ground. Run away! This has nothing to do with you. This is my fight. Izuku froze for a microsecond. He looked down at Ida. Your fight? Izuku snapped. Look at you, Ida. You're on the ground. Native is dying. This isn't a fight, it's an execution. You want to be a hero? Then shut up and let me save you. Ida was stunned. He had never heard such venom, such authority, from anyone other than a teacher. And this voice, it sounded familiar. Stain laughed. Good. Good. At least you understand the stakes, boy. But mere conviction won't stop me. Stain pushed off the wall. He was a blur of red and steel. Izuku threw the flashbang. Bang! The alley lit up white. But Stain had closed his eyes. He anticipated it. He sliced through the air blindly, relying on sound. Slash! Izuku felt a stinging line of fire across his left arm. The blade had cut through the hoodie and the Kevlar lining. Got you, Stain whispered. He flicked the sword. A droplet of blood flew through the air. Stain caught it with his long, sandpaper tongue. Slurp. Izuku's body went rigid. His knees locked. His fingers froze around the pipe. He toppled over, hitting the ground with a heavy thud. No! Ida screamed. Stain loomed over Izuku. He wiped the blade on his pants. Typo? Stain guessed. Shortest duration. You're lucky. Or unlucky. It means you'll be awake when I kill you. Izuku stared up at the sky. He couldn't move his head. He could only see the sliver of moon between the buildings. He had failed. He had analyzed everything, prepared for everything, but the skill gap was just too wide. Why? Stain asked, stepping closer. He looked down at Izuku with genuine curiosity. You have no quirk. I watched your movement. No enhancement. No emitter. Just gear and adrenaline. Why interfere? Why throw your life away for a fake hero like him? He pointed his sword at Ida. He's not a fake. Izuku forced the words out through paralyzed lips. It was hard to speak. He is, Stain insisted. He seeks revenge. He uses his power for self-satisfaction. He's lost. Izuku argued, his voice gaining strength despite the paralysis. He's hurting. That doesn't make him a fake. It makes him human. And you, Izuku's eyes burned with green fire. You talk about purging society, about true heroes, but you're just a murderer. You're killing people who are trying their best. You're not saving the world, you're just scaring it into submission. Stain paused. The madness in his eyes dimmed for a second, replaced by a contemplative sharpness. You think this society is worth saving? Stain asked. No, Izuku said. Stain blinked. Ida stopped sobbing. It's broken, Izuku admitted. The ranking system is a popularity contest. Heroes care more about merch sales than saving lives. I know that better than anyone. I was told I couldn't be a hero because I didn't have power. I was told to give up by the number one hero himself. Stain's eyes narrowed. All Might rejected you? Yes, Izuku rasped. But I'm still here. I'm still fighting. Because a hero isn't a license. A hero isn't a quirk. A hero is the person who saves the person lying on the ground, and if I have to crawl, if I have to bleed, if I have to break the law to do it, then I will. Silence descended on the alley. The sounds of the distant Nomu attacks seemed to fade. Stain lowered his sword slightly. He looked at the boy lying in the trash. A boy with no power, rejected by the god of this society, yet fighting with more spirit than any pro he had cut down in years. You! Stain murmured. Suddenly, the air pressure changed. A shriek echoed from above. Scree! A winged Nomu, one of the creatures Izuku had seen earlier, dived into the alley. It had been chasing a helicopter and crashed, drawn by the smell of blood. It wasn't aiming for Stain. It was aiming for the easiest meal, Izuku. The monster's talons extended, aiming to pierce Izuku's paralyzed chest. Move! Izuku screamed internally. Move, move, move! He couldn't. The talons came down. Squelch. Blood sprayed hot across Izuku's face. But it wasn't his blood. Stain stood over him. The killer had moved faster than thought. He had intercepted the Nomu, taking the talons through his own left shoulder. The spikes pierced through his vest, pinning Stain in place. Stain? Ida gasped. Stain didn't scream. He gritted his teeth, veins bulging in his forehead. With his free hand, he drove his katana upward, into the Noma's exposed brain. Get off him! Stain roared. He ripped the blade sideways. The Noma went limp, its brain scrambled. Stain shoved the heavy corpse aside, ripping himself free from the talons with a sickening wet tear. Stain collapsed to one knee, panting heavily. Blood poured from his shoulder. Izuku felt his fingers twitch. The paralysis was fading. Why? Izuku whispered. Why did you save me? Stain stood up, swaying. He looked at Izuku. His mask had fallen off in the struggle, revealing a noseless, scarred face. Because Stain growled, pointing a bloody finger at Izuku. You are worthy. He turned to Ida, who was trembling. You, Stain snarled at the engine user. Are fake. You are weak. But him. He gestured to Izuku. He is true. He has the heart. The only ones allowed to kill me are All Might and him. Stain sheathed his sword. He looked at the entrance of the alley. Blue and red lights were flashing against the brick walls. The pros were coming. Endeavor's flames were lighting up the street outside. They are coming, Stain said. He looked at Izuku. Can you move? Izuku scrambled to his feet. His legs were wobbly, but functional. Yes. Then go, Stain ordered. What? If they find you here, you will be arrested, Stain said. You have no license. You are a vigilante. They will lock you away and the world will lose a true hero. Go. Now. But you're injured, Izuku said, hesitant. I am the hero killer, Stain laughed, a manic, terrifying sound. I do not need your pity. Go. Stain turned and walked toward the alley entrance, limping but holding his head high. He was walking out to meet the pros. He was creating a distraction. Izuku looked at Ida. Can you stand? Izuku asked. Ida nodded slowly. The paralysis had worn off for him too. I think so. We have to leave, Izuku said. Native needs an ambulance, but if we stay, we're done. Midoriya. Ida whispered. It is you, isn't it? Izuku pulled his mask up. He didn't answer. He just offered Ida a hand. Let's go. The verdict of the world. The next morning, the world changed. The headlines didn't focus on the sports festival results. They didn't focus on the Nomu attack, though that was major news. They focused on a video. A grainy cell phone video, taken by a civilian from a balcony overlooking the alleyway entrance. It showed Endeavor and Gran Torino arriving at the scene. It showed the hero killer Stain, covered in blood, dragging a dead Nomu out of the shadows. And it caught the audio. The fake heroes, the ones who only care about themselves. I will purge them all! Stain stood alone against 3 pro heroes. He was injured, bleeding, and outnumbered. Yet, the heroes were terrified. They stepped back. But the camera also caught something else. Before Stain walked out, in the background, deep in the alley's shadows, a figure in a green hoodie was seen helping a wounded Ingenium, Tenya Ida, to a fire-escaped ladder. The internet sleuths zoomed in. The Green Rabbit. The narrative shifted within hours. Headline: Hero killer arrested. Vigilante spotted saving Ingenium. Article excerpt: While the pro-heroes were busy fighting the creatures in the city center, the notorious vigilante known as the Green Rabbit reportedly engaged the hero killer Stain to save UA student Tenya Ida and the pro-hero Native. Police have refused to comment, but leaked reports suggest Stain was captured not by Endeavor, but had already sustained heavy injuries fighting the vigilante. Izuku sat in his room, reading the comments. User: Justice for all. Wait, so a quirkless vigilante, rumored, held off the guy who killed 17 pros? And saved a kid? User: Hero Hater 69. The pros didn't even know Ida was missing. The vigilante did their job for them. User: Stain was right. Even Stain didn't kill the vigilante. Why? Stain kills fakes. If he let the rabbit live, it means the rabbit is the real deal. Izuku closed the laptop. He touched the bandage on his arm where Stain had cut him. He wasn't happy. Ida was in the hospital with permanent nerve damage in his left arm. Native was in critical condition. The city was in shambles, but he had survived, and more importantly, he had been acknowledged. Not by a fan, not by a teacher, but by the harshest critic in superhuman society. His phone buzzed. An encrypted message. It wasn't from Babymaker. It was a new number. Unknown, we saw what you did in Hosu. We share a common enemy. The League is interested. Izuku stared at the message. The League of Villains. They thought he was on their side because he fought the system? He deleted the message. I'm not on your side, Izuku whispered. He pulled out his notebook. He turned to the page marked Stain. He didn't cross it out. He wrote under it, ideology, flawed but compelling. Conviction is a superpower. Lesson, to change the world, you have to be willing to bleed for it. But you don't have to kill for it. Izuku stood up. He walked to the mirror. He looked at his reflection. The dark circles were deeper. The eyes were harder. He looked like a soldier. The police are looking for me, he said. Eraserhead knows my face. All Might suspects me. The walls were closing in. But for the first time, Izuku didn't feel like he was trapped. He felt like he was leading. He opened his closet. The iron saws sat there, dented and scratched. Time for an upgrade, he said. The detective's office. Tsukachi slammed the file onto the desk. We have a problem, he said to All Might. All Might sat on the sofa, clutching a cup of tea. He looked older today. The boy? The video confirms it, Tsukachi said. The green rabbit is Izuku Midoriya. The timeline matches. The height matches. And Ida isn't talking, but he refused to press charges against an unknown assailant. He's covering for him. He fought Stain, All Might whispered, horror in his voice. He could have died. He didn't die, Tsukachi said grimly. He won. Or at least, he survived long enough for Stain to respect him. Do you understand what this means, Toshi? All Might looked up. It means he's becoming a symbol, Tsukachi said. A symbol of the failure of hero society. People are asking why a quirkless boy is doing a better job than the licensed professionals. If we arrest him now, we make him a martyr. If we ignore him, we encourage vigilantism. All Might stood up. He walked to the window. I created this, All Might said softly. I told him to be realistic. I broke his hope. He clenched his fist. I need to find him, All Might said. Not to arrest him, but to save him before he goes too far. It might be too late for that, Tsukachi warned. Stain's ideology is spreading. And Midoriya is unknowingly becoming the face of the true hero movement. All Might looked at his reflection in the glass. The symbol of peace looked tired. Then I have to be faster, All Might said. But deep down, he knew, the boy wasn't chasing All Might anymore. The boy was running a race on a completely different track, and he was leaving the old world in the dust.